Basically, I might have a new theory on this whole Tartaria thing. Stay tuned, because it could get interesting. I may not have been the first one to have thought about this theory or spoken on it, but I haven't seen anything out there just yet, like any YouTube videos or anything on TikTok talking about this theory. So here we go. Hope y'all ready. It's kind of interesting. It might be a little reaching, but I mean, hey, we on a path to discover our true history, so we need to keep our minds open to the possibilities. But let's go. So what if the Tartarians, the global civilization that we call it today, what if they found those structures also? What if they weren't the ones that built them? What if they were the ones that also found them, but also still had that knowledge of how to use the buildings properly and upkeep them, to keep them looking pristine? Because when you look back at, so-called Roman architecture and Greek architecture, right? They look very similar, and they look just like the Tartarian stuff. But personally, me and also some other people in this alternative history community, we also think that those people, the Romans and the Greeks, also found those buildings and just, they used them. They inhabited them. They inhabited them as well, because they found them. They didn't build them. Because when you think about how, the type of technology it would take to build these buildings, the technology that these civilizations would have had to have would have to be way more advanced than what they're telling us. So here's Egypt. The building is kind of similar, right? You have the big pillars, almost the same architecture. Not 100%, but it's very similar. Here's Machu Picchu, right? This right here, if it was still in its, original form, original structure, if it was still there, would it look like what we see today with the regular Tartarian structures that we see, right? Would it look like that? That's a good question, right? Here's the Taj Mahal. It was said to be built in 1632. That's when construction started. Here's a building in India, right? Here's another building. See how similar that is to Roman and Greek. A building in Texas and a building in Moscow. So what I'm saying is that, what if these buildings that we see today that we call Tartarian were just the buildings that were able to be upkept, right? Kept in good condition after this catastrophe happened. And then what if the buildings that we see in ruins were just the ones that were not able to survive whatever catastrophe happened? Because we know about the floods that happened, right? We know about those. Many ancient cultures talk about them, damn near all of them. So what if these buildings are much, much older than we think they are, but for some reason, these selected thousands, or even maybe it's millions of buildings around the world, we don't have like an actual count of how many buildings that are still around that look, just like these old buildings. What if these buildings are just the survivors of the catastrophes that happened all them thousands of years ago? Like the Younger Dryas, the major flood event, right? What if the Tartarians were the ones who were able to hold on to the knowledge of the past ancient civilization that was more advanced than we are now, and keep it present, keep it going until something happens to them, which we're not 100% sure about what happened to them, but all we know is that they're not here no more. Or did something happen to them to where they're just somewhere else? Where is that at? I don't know. We don't know what happened to them. But the evidence that there was, in fact, a global civilization that existed some time ago is all in our face. If you're actually looking with those eyes to see that, then it's kind of clear. I wouldn't say kind of, I would say it actually is, because a lot of the architecture around the world is very similar. It's not exact, but it's very similar. It's, some of it is megalithic, some of it isn't. I said megalithic. Some of it is megalithic and some of it isn't, but it's all very similar, which makes me come to that conclusion. But did the Tartarians actually build those buildings, or did they find it? That's the big question. Just like, did the Romans build that stuff, or did they find it? Did the Greeks build it, or did they find it? Did the Egyptians build it, or did they find it? Like the Mayans. I believe it was the Mayans. Don't quote me on this, because this is something I've heard, but I haven't researched it myself. This is what I've heard. But I've heard that, I believe Teotihuacan, excuse me if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but I heard that even, I believe it was the Mayans, they said that they didn't build it, they found it. And you have the Incas also saying that they didn't build that stuff that's over there, they found it. They just repurposed it. So that makes me think, not just out of emotion, but out of logic, that a lot of these structures around the world, we didn't build them, we found them from an ancient culture that existed globally, just like we do today. Yes, we have our little nations and our little countries all separate, but we are still one global civilization. And what if there was one just like that, thousands of years ago, that is slowly going away, but somehow the buildings, the remnants, has survived? Because even, this is another one, another reach. You have melted buildings. You can see them, the melted brick. And then also, let me show y'all a picture. Now, this might be a reach right here, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Like, it kind of looks melted or just heavily weathered. Like, compared to this, like, this is probably just a cherry pick to find something that looks similar to this, but this ain't my picture. This is right here. But he's got a good point. You know what I mean? They're very similar. Now, was this actually something, a building, or was it not? We don't know, but it's interesting. It's interesting to think about what our past could really have actually been. We really could have been more advanced. I don't see why not. But as always, there's so much more to discuss. Obviously, these past three, this video is the third one. I'm barely scratching the surface with anything. There's so much more to talk about. So this discussion is open to the comments. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss. I just want to hear what y'all think, because we got to figure out our true history. And we can't keep waiting to find out. We need to start doing the research ourselves and figuring out what's going on. Let's get it.